So the question was types of profitable relationships. I'm going to change the answer slightly to talk about collaborative arrangements. Yes, profit is important, because if you don't have profit in our competitive environment these days, institutional owners of stock will just leave and go someplace else. Partly because we have to report our stock situation every quarter, not every year. But when we talk about collaborative arrangements, because it is recognized, either rightly or wrongly, because I don't totally buy into this, that sometimes the best way to do something is in collaboration. However, at the same time, I think about some of the greatest things that have been done by mankind, either individual inventions or whatever. It wasn't a group of people.
Right.
You know? So it was one or two individuals that could make a decision and make a decision fast. So we're talking about a number of different types of collaborative arrangements and why companies do this and some of the motives. So before we get into some explanation of different types, let's look at some of the reasons why. First of all, to diversify the cost to other people. So one of the reasons why sometimes you have collaboration among different developers of a technological image storage device, like the DVD concept or MP3 or so on, is that the cost of doing that runs into billions of dollars, not into the millions. So you have Mitsubishi and Sumitomo and Sony and all these companies getting together as a consortium to be able to do that, because the costs are prohibitive.
That could never happen in the US.
And also to specialize in core competencies as well. And also some avoid some competition, the vertical and horizontal links. So an example of that would be the Japanese Sogo Shosha. So I use Mitsubishi as an example.
Okay.
The easiest way to draw Mitsubishi is to start off like this, right? And you go like that, and that you've got the 3 stars of Mitsubishi, right? Mitsu means 3 and Bishi means diamond. That's the Mitsubishi logo right there. So what Mitsubishi does is Mitsubishi HI, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, is owned, say, for the sake of argument, 20% by Mitsubishi Sogo Shosha, which in turn is owned 15% by Mitsubishi Bank. And there's also Mitsubishi Electric and Mitsubishi Mining and Manufacturing, which also owns part of this, which owns part of this, which owns part of that, which owns part of this, which owns part of that. So if you said, how much equity does this company have? Well, we've got 6 billion ourselves, but we also got 1 billion from them, and we've got 2 billion from them, we've got 3 billion from them, which is somewhat artificial because they in turn are owned by it. See what I'm saying? Yeah, so that's so go show shot. And in Korea, they have another word in Korean language for the same type of thing. Weaknesses and strengths. Worked really good in the 1980s. But in Korea, which had a similar type of structure, it got to be somewhat incestuous because the Korean companies were then challenged to describe the mathematics of their financing so that people can make a proper judgment about financing and taxation and so on. And they underreported certain things and got in a lot of trouble. And there was some court cases and even led to the resignation of the Prime Minister. Or President, yeah. So other things about, now that we understand sort of that type of structure in terms of links, horizontal, vertical links, other reasons for collaborative relationships, market knowledge, getting specific assets. So when McDonald's went into Japan, they picked a partner that was already a sequence of stores throughout the country rather than going in by themselves. So that could help them with the political, legal, regulatory environment and so on. Overcoming legal restraints. Do you know how most Canadian corporate lawyers make money? Not by billing their clients, but by one political requirement, legal regulatory requirement, where incorporated companies need a certain number of Canadian directors. I know that in the 1980s, and there was a number of Canadian lawyers in Toronto serving Japanese clients who had themselves named on the board of directors of those Japanese companies, and they would get anywhere from a couple thousand to maybe tens of thousands of dollars per month for that purpose because they needed Canadian directors. So, well, we'll pick our accountant, we'll pick our Canadian lawyer, right? So that's an example of a collaboration to overcome legal constraints. So some of these major ways to get involved: indirect co-op, direct licensing, franchising, contract manufacturing, joint venture, alliances, Let me just give you a couple of little examples. First of all, types of collaborative relationships, indirect export. You can have sensational examples like the Pratt & Whitney helicopters, which had the engines sold to Beijing, or you can have something simple like paint. Now, on metal and plastic, dyeing this particular color is quite challenging because plastic doesn't easily let itself be dyed unless there's a chemical combination, certain types of metal as well. This is why you find lead in paint used by a lot of companies because it allows adherence to metal and other types of plastic because of a chemical reaction, right? So, indirect exporting could be an example of a company which had its paint used by another company to create a product, and then that product gets exported. As a consequence of being in another country, it may be not in compliance of a regulation about this not being toxic if someone's chewing on the end, as an example. But they didn't plan on selling it to Canada, they were just selling it domestically. So that's an example of an indirect exporting situation. Licensing and licensing technology is very common for branded clothing products. This is why you sometimes find situations where companies making footwear, you've got your food, clothing, transportation, in places like Vietnam will have a factory where they're making 20,000 Nike Air Jordans, and the same factory they're making 30,000 Adidas soccer cleats, etc. Right? So that's an example of licensing. Now I'll give you one little sort of tidbit of information here, which you might find personally interesting as to why sizes change. Some of these companies, because of the competitive environments, when they take the layout for these different clothing products, try to scrimp a little bit on how the saw cuts the pattern such that they can get more in the section of the garment yard. So in the process of doing that, they can make 20,000 instead of 17,000. What do they do with those extra 3,000? They sell them on the black market. They're not knockoffs. They're actually the real thing itself, made to standards. But sometimes you'll find that you can't wear medium anymore. You have to wear a large because the medium is actually a little bit too tight and the shoe is just a little bit too narrow and so on. So that's what happens when licensing is done by companies that are somewhat unscrupulous in terms of the schmatza trade, particularly women's clothing, shoes, and other things like that. Some inconsistency in size. Franchising. Now this is a big, big thing. Franchising around the world. If you want to get rich, create a franchise that can be bought for less than $50,000. Why? Because the economic stress around the world is causing tens of millions of people to emigrate. And unlike my great-grandfather who came here with a bag of salt, an axe, and a flintlock rifle, and 3 of his 7 children died of various diseases and 1 got wounded by an arrowhead, etc. People who come here now are necessarily of a different category because they have to go through the very painful process of bribing border guards and paying for snake guys and all these people to get out of the godforsaken country they're coming from. So when they come here, they don't want to have Mohammed's hamburger stand. They want to open a McDonald's, but a McDonald's will cost them a couple $1,000,000. But if they can open a Subway shop, which just is a couple $100,000, that's totally different. So that's why McDonald's is no longer the fastest growing franchise in the world. It's other ones that are smaller like Subway, which are driven by immigrant investors. And as a point of curiosity, you can go anywhere around the GTA and walk into a Subway, and almost every single person there will be of the same ethnicity as the person who owned it. So you're walking to a Subway shop and everybody speaks Punjabi, right? Or everybody speaks Tagalog, or everybody's from Greece, etc.
Pizzas.
Exactly, yeah. And so franchising as a collaboration is one way who brands, particularly in the food brand industry, spread themselves overseas because people are wanting to be able to do that. It's more and more popular.
Food, clothing, transportation.
Exactly. Yeah, food, clothing, transportation. Contract manufacturing, I've talked a little bit about.
Is that the reason why corner stores are also
Well, in that particular case there, I don't know the exact details, but one of the reasons why there's more Koreans running corner stores in Canada than, say, Japanese or Taiwanese or so on is because for many years, the Canadian government had a situation in Korea where people who wanted to immigrate to get a particular class of visa could have money to be able to buy Beckers, and then 6 months later they would switch and sell to a new incoming person, etc. So that just happened to be that type of a thing, right? In fact, there's even a Korea Store Owners Restaurant Association, which is lobbying for things like rules about cigarette display cases and things like that, which has been challenging to them. They say it puts them at risk of people robbing the store and those kinds of things.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
The Korean Store Owner Association.
Yeah.
That's incredible.